Good afternoon, everybody. Welcome to the City of Bloomington's Facebook Live event. My name is Jamie Verbrugge. I'm the City Manager for the City of Bloomington. We scheduled this Facebook Live Q&A to talk about the proposed water park project at Mall of America. There's been a lot of interest in the community. It's been discussed at a couple of different events. This is the first time we're doing a Q&A through Facebook Live, so we're hoping that you enjoy this, that you take advantage of the opportunity to submit some questions, and that you share with your friends too. Joining me today, Shane Rudlang is the director or the administrator of the Bloomington Port Authority. The Port Authority is the development arm of the City of Bloomington in the South Loop Development District. Shane's going to talk about the project. He's our lead negotiator and project manager. He has a tremendous amount of information, and then after we give you a quick overview of the project, we'll take some questions, some of which were already submitted through Nextdoor and through Facebook, and we'll have more coming in during the live event, and we'll take those as we can. So let's go ahead and get started. Shane, can you do a quick overview of what the project is, the scope of it, what we're trying to accomplish, et cetera?
Sure. So the water park project in South Loop would be built directly behind where we're sitting today. We're in the office building at Mall of America on the north side. And you saw a preview of an image of what the water park may look like when it would start construction roughly a year from now if everything goes as planned, and then open roughly 2 years after that. Large water park projects like this are becoming a little bit more common around the country, but still a big water park like this takes a lot of work and effort to pull off. It's something that the city has approved as part of the expansion plans out here for many decades. We did see a water park get built at Great Wolf Lodge, just a kitty corner from the mall. It's about a 75,000 square foot indoor water park with a hotel. This would be a 250,000 square foot building footprint water park with about 360,000 square feet of total space. And once again, that could be one of the largest or the largest built in North America. And so it would be an amenity not only to the city of Bloomington and the region, but from the greater upper Midwest area.
Good. So why does the City of Bloomington want to pursue a project like this? Why does Mall of America want to do this project?
Sure. The reasons are similar, and there's some overlap. Surely the city wants to do this because it adds another amenity to this area. A big part of the revenue source for the city's general fund, a noticeable portion of it, comes from the existing and in-place lodging tax that's collected in one of the, or any of the 9,100 hotel rooms that Bloomington has in its borders today. And we'll have about 10,000 of those roughly in about a year and a half from now, because there's a number of them that are under construction. And so that helps out standard Bloomington property taxes. When people come to Bloomington and stay in hotel rooms, that reduces the rate that residents pay for property taxes. And so that's one reason. It certainly adds, once again, an amenity to Bloomington and to the region that doesn't exist today in a big world-class water park. And then also it adds a vibrancy and different mix of people to the area in South Loop and to the Mall of America.
Yeah, folks may not know that about 40 million visitors go through the doors at Mall of America every year. About 40% of those come from outside of the 150-mile circle around the Twin Cities area, and about 10% of them are international visitors. So there are a lot of people coming to this area, and one of the things the Mall of America wants to do, one of the things the city wants to do, is to continue to have new attractions and new interesting venues to keep them coming back to visit, right?
Correct.
Okay.
Absolutely.
Well, let's talk about the project specifics, the financing of the project especially. That's been something that I think that folks have had a number of questions about. It's a unique structure, it's a really expensive project, and it's really complex. So to the best that you can you make it a little bit simpler to understand how the structure works?
Sure, I will try. So the water park, as we've structured this financing, would be owned by a nonprofit entity, and we're currently in the process of talking to a number of different nonprofits to find the right fit for that nonprofit owner. They actually are the owner of the water park. They build it, they borrow the money for it for over a 30-year period. And the reason that we've used this ownership structure is because it protects the city from risk. The city, over the many decades, has coveted its risk profile in lots of different ways, and to date has a really strong history with all of that. And so we always structure these deals thinking about Bloomington property taxpayers and how to protect them. And so this structure really does that. People always ask, what if the water park doesn't perform? So the only revenue source for the loan payment for the project is the water park revenues. And if those revenues aren't enough to pay that loan payment, then taxes are turned on, if you will, at Mall of America on admissions and lodging, food and beverage, and sales tax in kind of a cascading order depending on how much money would be needed.
But not property taxes.
But not property taxes. These are taxes only collected on the two main mall lots, which is the Mall of America Phase 1 building and then the lot behind us to the north, including IKEA. And so that's just a pass-through. And so that's one of the city's roles in this project, is just to pass that money through, and only if it's there and only in the amount that's collected. So there's no obligation to supplement that money. In fact, there's no legal way to supplement that money.
So the nonprofit entity owns the project. They authorize the issuance of the bonds, the debt to pay for the project. If the city doesn't have risk and the property taxpayers don't have risk, which we don't, who's taking the risk on the project?
Sure. The people that are taking the risk on this project will be fully informed through an offering statement that is created by financing people and the underwriter, and the people that buy those bonds to finance the project are the ones that get to decide whether or not they want to risk their money in the project. And those are typically institutional and larger investors. This is typically not something that that I would buy or people that I know. These are institutions that are well versed in these specific types of bonds, which are tax exempt, which has advantages beyond the project itself. And so that's what makes this project financeable, is the interest rate that they pay on the loan is just about half roughly of what you would pay typically in a normally privately funded development.
Got it. If you see me looking the other direction, we have one of our communications crew, Eric, is sitting next to me, taking your questions from the Facebook Live event. So please put your questions in addition to Grant behind the camera, who's also helping us out today. One of the pre-submitted questions, obviously a number of people know that there's a similar project to this at the West Edmonton Mall, which is a sister property to Mall of America. It's owned by the same ownership group, 555. There's a question about how that water park was built, and we have to acknowledge it was 35 years ago, and what's different about that project compared to this one.
Sure. So the West Edmonton Mall in Canada is what Mall of America was modeled after. They have an amusement center, they have a water park, other amenities, recreational. They have a big pirate ship in the middle of it. It was built in the 80s, and it is what Mall of America was modeled after. It is more like a number of Southdales kind of snapped together. It's not master planned as well as Mall of America was master planned. Right. And so, but it is a very big project. It's over 5 million square feet, just like Mall of America. Mall of America all in is a little bit bigger now, but Mall of America was really modeled after that. Of course, they didn't build the water park in the first phase. But that project up there in Canada was all privately financed. So that was done in the 80s. Canada doesn't really do that type of thing. You move down to the United States, the closest project to Mall of America, the closest facsimile in the US, is a project that's being built out in New Jersey, the American Dream New Jersey, which is also being built by 555 and was promoted by Governor Christie back in the day and received a substantial public subsidy to get built, and which is the case for all, well not all, but probably very close to all large water park projects, be they Great Wolf or Kalahari in various places like the Poconos and things like that. These often see public subsidy. So
you mentioned Great Wolf Lodge. I think a lot of the folks watching us are aware that Great Wolf Lodge is just a stone's throw away from Mall of America here. That's actually a successor to the original water park that was built there. I think they're the third operator now. Great Wolf Lodge has a different operating model. When it was approved a couple years ago, it was approved so that the users of the water park had to be guests of the hotel. The city council just took action in the last couple weeks to actually give them some permission to open it up to the public. But there's been a concern about this water park that's being proposed and Great Wolf Lodge, and whether this town is big enough for 2 water parks.
Sure. What we think about when we think about Great Wolf Lodge and adding another big water park is we think about the Dells and all the water parks that exist there. The Poconos is another cluster of water park resorts, Great Wolf's and others. They seem to cluster. You think of Orlando. That water park is a 75,000 square foot water park. It has a certain market segment that it serves very well. They're a really good operator.
Sorry about the technical difficulties. We lost our live feed for about a minute there. The vagaries of Wi-Fi. Let's jump back into what you were talking about between Great Wolf and the water park and sort of the clustering effect.
Sure. Examples of water park clustering, and I'm not exactly sure where I got cut off, but I'll repeat it in summary, is we think about the Dells and the Poconos and Orlando. These amusement and water park areas seem to cluster together and offer different products. If you've been up to the Dells like I have with my family, they have the Kalahari, which is one big indoor water park. It's supersized, and then they have the Wilderness, which has a bunch of satellite water parks. They offer different things to different people, right. and this water park will be once again one of the largest in North America, whereas Great Wolf does a great job of catering to the people that they serve.
Right, and they'll have different products too, different experiences. Okay.
Right.
We had a couple of questions submitted, one in advance and one during the feed here. I think a couple of folks who are a little bit more environmentally conscious and understand that water is a precious commodity. When you talk about like places like the Dells where you have a lot of water parks, this is going to be a high user of water. So a question from Amy and a question from Jenna about the impact on the freshwater supply. And if it's been considered as we've developed this project.
I'm not sure if we're live or not, but I will continue to answer the question. So the question was about water and what we're doing from a water use standpoint and sustainability standpoint on the project. Sustainability was a key part of the contract that is going to design this project, and so we're not quite at the phase yet of getting into specificity about that, but the water for the project will come through the normal potable water supply from Bloomington, and the water that is used in the park will get discharged to the sanitary sewer. And this area, South Loop, has been planned for intense uses for many years, actually many decades, and so the pipes have all been sized for large uses, and water park has been one of those uses since the beginning, actually, in the late 80s.
Right. You mentioned South Loop, the development district that contains Mall of America, but also the area that goes from Cedar Avenue, the Highway 77, all the way east to the river, and from 494 down to Old Shakopee Road. That whole area is called South Loop Development District. So one of the questions that I've received from a number of people is that we're focused all of our efforts on the Mall of America. One of the things that I want to say about that is the City Council has strategic goals, 6 strategic goals, one of which is focused renewal. And in that focused renewal goal, what the council is trying to do is make sure that we are making efforts throughout the community to refresh and renew and revitalize some of the aging parts of our community, make sure that they remain vital and vibrant going into the future. So as a matter of fact, just this year we have approved an affordable housing ordinance that's going to spur development of much needed housing units. And then also we have recently created a gateway development district that's going to tie together some of our aging neighborhood commercial nodes like 98th and Nicollet and 98th and Lyndale, 90th and Penn, American and Portland, Lyndale Avenue corridor, recognizing that these aging commercial nodes are maybe not designed to meet the current needs of the neighborhoods surrounding them. So we are working in that regard. We also have 2 other development districts at Penn American and also at Normandale Lakes. So the South Loop Development District is one of our 3 large, well now 4 large development districts. Talk a little bit about how this fits in with the South Loop Development Plan.
Sure. So the South Loop District Plan, as Jamie mentioned, is a focused plan for this area of Bloomington that's east of Trunk Highway 77 called South Loop. And this area is a lot of different things. On the east side of this district, where the light rail is, there are a lot of housing projects that are either getting built or are getting talked about. And a big one that's under construction right now, the Fenley over at Bloomington Central Station. As you move westerly in this area that's roughly the size of downtown Minneapolis, it gets a little bit more entertainment and hospitality focused. Of course, the biggest piece of that is Mall of America. And so the water park fits in well with that demographic, that user mix. Right. It will extend people's stays in hotel rooms as they're visiting for whatever reason.
Right. Conferences in downtown Minneapolis, we often get a lot of conference goers that stay in Bloomington. Major events like Super Bowl or the Final Four, Bloomington is a big hospitality host as well. So again, trying to diversify the number of attractions that we have. Let's ask back to some more questions. At some point, we already hit that one with Great Wolf. Sorry about that. So a refresher again about the project itself. Whose land is it being built on? And again, why is the city involved?
Sure. So the project itself is being built on land that 555 currently owns, and 555 is the owner of Mall of America. And the city is involved for a number of key reasons that are key to this structure of the deal. The most important one is the pass-through. As I mentioned, if you were tuning in at the early part of the live event here, these pass-through of sales and use taxes that are collected at Mall of America. So once again, the city doesn't pledge those beyond what is collected. So there's no risk. It's just, if X is collected, X is passed through to the water park loan payment if the revenues aren't sufficient to pay that loan payment. And it's important, I think, to say and mention right now that this project is still in a feasibility and design phase. This project isn't for sure sitting here today. We have a number of steps that are happening as we speak. I spent the morning working on the project with various experts and consultants to make sure that this project is feasible, and it's certainly possible that it doesn't happen. We think it will happen, but it could stop.
Good. So along with the whose land is it, we had a question submitted by Randy in advance saying, is the city subleasing the land to nonprofit for 50 years, was one of the things that I think was a little bit confusing, and how the lease payments are structured over the time period, and then what happens at the end of the 30-year period. So let's start with the 50 years. Are we subleasing the land for 50 years?
Sure. So the project's set up on a lease. It'll be a water park for 50 years, and the first 30 of those years, the nonprofit owns it while the loan is outstanding for the project. Now, once that loan is paid off, then the city owns it, but the city then owns it without any loan payment. So that's a big benefit to the city. But during the first 30 years, the nonprofit owns it. There is a lease structure that's set up where the city leases it and then leases it to the nonprofit. We have to be sandwiched in there, but we don't have any risk for that lease payment. If there's no water park revenues, we don't have to pay the lease payment or anything like that. So
it's a 30-year term, it's not 50.
Right. It's a 30-year term with the nonprofit and then 20 after that.
Yeah, and it also is important to, with the 30 years, that's the anticipated term of the debt. If the water park performs much better than that financially, the way that it's structured is that additional revenues would go to service the debt, so it may be paid off even sooner, correct?
Exactly, and so just like on your home mortgage, if you own a home, you can pay it off early, and that's a feature that will be included in the bond offering statement and the loan documents, that if the revenues are higher than anticipated, then you'll pay that off earlier, and the city would own it free and clear earlier.
Good. All right, so we touched on this a little bit, but Nick submitted a question in advance that says, what will it cost the taxpayers when the boondoggle fails? And I'm reading the question just the way it was submitted, because we recognize that some people are very skeptical of this, and understandably so. It's a complex deal, right? And so the way that really complicated commercial projects get financed, especially when we have this new nonprofit entity as a piece of the financing, it gets really confusing. So let's just touch once again, should the project not go well, what happens?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, back to this, and I know this diagram isn't perfect, but it's as good as we could do. Once again, the city does not have any obligation to pay for anything on the water park except for passing through those taxes once the thing gets built. There's some nuances that I'm not going to go into that are outside of this diagram, but once the project's built, if the revenues for the water park don't pay the loan payment, the city passes through those taxes. And so, if the project were to go completely belly up, there would be a bankruptcy proceeding, and they would come in and they would want to, there would be an entity that would represent the people that bought the bonds for the project, and their goal is to get the bond buyers some revenue so they'll keep the project running, because there would be some profits from the project for sure, and it's what's called a workout. And their workout would happen, the project would very likely still stay open, the bondholders would not receive all their money.
Right. All right, Jim submitted a question in advance. Is the YMCA partnering with the city on this project? The answer is no. We had a community center. We do have a community center project that we're working on. The YMCA was identified as a possible partner in that project, which the council has chosen to go in a different direction, and so the YMCA is not currently a partner in that project. Let's talk about who the partners are for this project, though.
Sure. So the partners for this project, once again, the city, as I've mentioned, and then the Port Authority is typically involved in these projects out here for providing public infrastructure like parking. So the Port Authority is involved with the project. There's the nonprofit, and there's an underwriter which packages the loan into right-sized pieces for the people that will buy it. There's 555. They're a co-developer along with the Port Authority. A 555 entity is the land lessor, so they receive the lease payment for the land pad for where the project would sit. And there's a number of consultants, of course, doing design and things like that now. A 555 entity that would market this and manage it along with other attractions at Mall of America. They would be the manager of the water park project. And so those are the primary players. The primary players, yep.
So again, you mentioned the Port Authority, and for those who are just tuning in, we're talking about the water park project at Mall of America. The Port Authority is the development arm for the city that works primarily in the South Loop Development District. Where does funding come from for the development activity that we do in the area around South Loop and around Mall of America if it's not property taxpayer dollars?
Sure. Funding for the Port Authority comes through a couple of different avenues. There are 2 large TIF districts that exist out in South Loop.
TIF is a tax increment financing district.
Thank you. Yes. Tax increment financing is the new taxes that are created after a project is built. We could certainly fill a half an hour talking about TIF, but I won't do that. Anyway, that's taxes from Mall of America and then the Bloomington Central Station project. And then there's another funding source called the South Loop Development Fund, which is generated from lodging taxes that, once again, people come and stay in a hotel room in Bloomington. Part of that tax is put into the South Loop Development Fund and statutorily, via state statute, dedicated to this area. And then a liquor tax collected citywide as well, once again, statutorily dedicated to this area.
Right. And then we also have admissions taxes, which don't go into the South Loop Development Fund, but they do go to the city's general fund. So one of the positive things about this large development district here and how vibrant it is with the hotel lodging taxes, with the admission taxes, that money that goes into the city general fund is about 15% of the total operating. So it's a significant amount of money that comes in. So it's one of the benefits of having Mall of America in Bloomington is it is a substantial contributor to our tax base, but we also generate a lot of other revenue for associated activity, right?
Absolutely, yep.
Yeah. Good. All right, we have a message from Scott, who says, when will it start being built? He's excited to bring his nieces when it's finally open. What's the project timeline?
Sure. The project timeline is, once again, if we get through design and feasibility proves out, once again, this project isn't for sure. We think it's a buildable project for sure right now, but there is a chance that it doesn't move forward. So the current schedule is that in February of 2020, the project would start construction and open roughly 2 years after that. So spring or early summer of 2022.
Good. So we've got about 3.5 minutes left in our broadcast. We've got 23 viewers right now. Thanks for sticking with us. We've had a little bit of technical difficulties, so appreciate you hanging in there. We had a question submitted by Kim. This is a public process, right? Anytime the City Council or the Port Authority, which is actually a body appointed by the City Council, is conducting business, those are public meetings. So Kim was wondering what other opportunities are there for the public to weigh in as this moves through the review and approval process.
Sure. Directly, there's opportunities to attend the concurrent council and Port Authority meetings, and probably the easiest way to do that is to e-subscribe, and there'll be a link that you can click on in the information to e-subscribe, which you get an email about Port Authority meetings that are coming up. The other way is through events like this. We typically don't hold Facebook Live events for development projects. This is the first time we've done this, which is great. But typically the public isn't super involved in the intricacies of a particular development deal, and it's fine that they are, and we're happy to do this. And so this is the first of its kind. We'll see how it goes. But right now, this project has been talked about at the various city town halls that have been held over the past year and a half. The project has come up, and Q&A happened at those face-to-face events. It's part of the State of the City address. We're doing this event, and so, yeah.
We also have other communication vehicles from the City of Bloomington. Bloomington Briefing shows up in your mailbox every month. We have the city's YouTube channel. You can also check out our Facebook and our Twitter. So there are a lot of different ways that you can access information about what's going on around Bloomington, of which this just happens to be one thing. Randy submits a question, says, 555 will benefit from a steady revenue stream associated with. So what risk are they taking in this project?
Sure.
And let's talk about their revenue stream as well.
Sure. So once again, 555 are the owners of the Mall of America, and they do get a ground lease payment on the project and a management fee. So they do benefit from the project financially, but they are only allowed to get via the various tax-exempt bonding rules and lots of IRS regulations and whatnot. We have a team of lawyers looking at these things. They're only able to get the amount that the market would pay, no more and no less. In fact, they're regulated out of, if they wanted to, take a lesser fee on any of those things. What are they risking? They're risking the land. They're trying to, obviously they're trying to bring more people to the district and Mall of America and hotel rooms, which are aligned goals. So this is truly a public-private partnership, and it's something that we've been doing with Mall of America and other people in South Loop and other areas of the city for a long time. And private entities do need to make a profit in order for them to be involved in projects.
Right. And I would just reinforce the fact that the way that the city has historically approached complicated projects like this is to make sure that we're managing our risk, which is our taxpayers' risk, to the greatest extent possible. It's the reason that the city has AAA bond ratings from Moody's and Standard & Poor, and the bond houses that folks are familiar with. It's because we really strive to make sure that the risks that we do take are measured risks, and that we protect the community to the greatest extent we can. All right, we are into our last few seconds here of our live Q&A related to the water park project here at Mall of America. We want to thank everybody who tuned in. If you appreciated this, we would welcome that feedback. If you have suggestions for how we can do this better, we would welcome that feedback as well. So please share after the fact so that other folks have a chance to see and send us your comments. And as always, be sure to check in on the Bloomington Briefing, your Bloomington cable and YouTube channels to check in on what's going on around town for all the latest news, not just what's going on with the water park. Shane, thanks for taking the time today. Thanks to our staff for making this possible. Thank you most to you for tuning in. Have a great day.